Hi and welcome back to my kitchen. Today, Heidi and Emily, Jane and Anna, and perhaps John are going to help me make Nana's corn chowder. So this is a classic recipe of Nana's. She's been making it for, I don't know, probably 70 years. And it's a simple chowder made up of fresh corn, onions, fresh potatoes, and bacon, of course. And it's going to be mixed with milk into a creamy chowder. So let's get cooking. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cook our potatoes. So we do need a few pots for this soup. We're going to cook our potatoes in a separate pot. We're not going to drain our water. We're going to save it and add it all to our soup a little bit later. So the girls are going to help me to chop up these potatoes first. So they're going to be about this size, maybe ½ an inch by ½ an inch. So I'm going to give some strips to the girls and they're going to start chopping. I'm using fresh potatoes straight out of my garden, so I am not peeling them because the peel is young and it adds a lot of flavor and color to the soup. Now, if I was making this in the middle of winter with russet potatoes from the store, I would probably peel them, but that's up to you. The goal here is to keep your pieces uniform. So whatever size you pick, try to stick with it, and then your potatoes will cook evenly. Okay, that's 4 cups of potatoes. So Jane is going to dump it here into our pot. And then I'm going to cover them with water till they're just covered. We're going to pour in the water. That looks about right. We're going to add about ½ teaspoon of salt to our pot of potatoes. And then we're going to turn this on and we're going to cook them until they're just tender. We don't want them to be falling apart, but we want them to be cooked through. I've turned my potatoes on to high. I'm just going to cover them there and let them do their thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook my corn. Now, if you want to make this in the winter months, you can just use frozen corn and omit this step altogether. That's right, so that way it doesn't splash. Good. So what we're going to do is we're going to let our pot come back up to a rolling boil. And once it's boiling nice and hard, we're going to turn it off. And we're just going to let the corn sit in there for about 5 minutes before we put it under cold water to stop the cooking process. So I've got this nice big sweet onion, which is by far my favorite kind of onion to use in everything. And since we have them fresh on hand right now in August, this is what we're going to use. So these onions are massive, and I want about 1 cup of onion. So I am going to cut it into half, and that's going to be more than enough. I'm just taking off that outer layer of peel because it's a bit tough. Okay, so let's cut our onion in half. You can see at the bottom there, there's just that one little tough spot from where it was growing. I'll just cut that out. Cut it one way, and then I just cut it the other way and it falls into cubes. Let's measure that and see what we've got here. So it looks like we're going to have more than a cup here. I'm just going to add it all anyway. My whole family really likes onions, so let's just set that aside while we chop up our bacon. So the base of our soup is going to be bacon, and we're going to chop it up into bits, which is easier when it's half frozen, which this is not. This is half a pack of bacon, or about 6 pieces. And we're going to cook it first and use the fat from it to cook our onions and build up our soup from there. So let's add this to our pot and get it. Turn our bacon here onto medium-high heat, and we're just going to let it cook. While that's heating up, let's check on our potatoes. So they're simmering away here. I've turned the heat down, and I'm just going to get a fork and gently poke one. Let's just pull one right out so I can show you, and I'm just going to gently, there's quite a bit of resistance still, so we're going to let them keep simmering there for another couple minutes. Now our corn has been sitting here in the hot water for about 5 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull it out, we're going to rinse it under cold water, and then we're going to cut all of the kernels off of our corn. Okay, so we're going to pull our corn out. It's Isn't that beautiful? There's nothing that says summer quite like corn on the cob. Rinse it under cold water. If I was doing this in large amounts, like if I was going to spend the day freezing corn for the winter, then I would fill up a bucket or a big bowl with ice water and drop the corn in there. But because I'm just doing a few cobs and I'm using them right away, I'm just gonna rinse them like this in cold water. So I'm gonna show you now how to cut the kernels off the cob. This is a funny little trick I learned. I'm just using a bundt pan and I'm gonna put the cob right here in the middle. I'm gonna cut the kernels off and they're all gonna catch in here instead of doing it on a cutting board and making a huge mess. It's kind of a funny little trick. It works really, really well. So if I wanted to freeze this corn in bags for the winter, I would cut it off the cob here, and then I would spread it out on a cookie sheet and put it in the freezer for a couple hours to freeze hard, and then put it into bags from there, and you'll have corn for the winter. So now our bacon here is sizzling away. You see how it's releasing its fat. It's not crispy and brown yet, but it's starting to cook. So this is the time when I want to add my onions. So I am just going to dump in my chopped up onions here, and then we're going to keep cooking this till the bacon is fully cooked and until the onions are translucent. So that takes about 5 to 7 minutes. So let's check our potatoes once more. I'm just going to poke one against the side here, and I see that it's soft all the way through. So I am going to turn that off. I'm going to put it right here. I'm not going to drain it because we're adding all of that to our soup. I'm just going to let it sit there till we're ready for it. We've got the kernels cut off our 4 corn cobs, and I'm aiming for about 2 cups of corn. Okay, let's check on our bacon and onions again. The bacon is starting to crisp up and shrink. The onions are clear, so we're ready to go to our next step. I have 1/3 of a cup of flour, and I'm going to use this to thicken my soup. So I am going to sprinkle it over my onions and bacon. And you need to stir a lot, okay? So we don't want to make a lumpy soup. We stir that before we add a little bit more. And once it's all evenly coated, I'm going to add the milk. Add a little bit of milk and stir, maybe half of it. And stir it in before adding the rest. So let's add the rest here. And then I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit, back up to medium-high, and we're going to stir this. You don't have to stir it quite constantly, but just remember that milk burns very easily, so you do need to stir it frequently. If we stir this again now, you can see it's really starting to thicken up, and it looks like it's coming just about to a simmer. Yes, it is. So we want to simmer it for 1 minute, and that's just going to cook out our flour so you don't have a pasty taste to your soup. So our soup has changed. You can see it's nice and thick. We are going to take now our potatoes along with all the water in it, and we are going to add that to our soup pot, pouring away from us so that we don't splash all over. We're going to stir that in. And then we are going to add all of our corn kernels, as well as a can of creamed corn. Depending on how much water was in your potatoes and that kind of stuff, it might be thicker one time and thinner the next. You can always add a little bit more milk to get it how you want it. It is supposed to be a thick soup. It's a very hearty chowder. Now this soup does not have to sit here and simmer because it's mostly milk. You actually don't want it to. So once you've brought everything back up to temperature, like just to a simmer, then you're ready to serve it. I am going to add a little bit of salt and pepper here. So I added about ½ a teaspoon there, and I'm going to add about ½ a teaspoon of pepper as well. And that's how you make Nana's corn chowder. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos.